Your Creative Push, episode 43.
Reflect on this one thing. What is it that you offer the world? What is your gift?
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Natasha Wescoat. Natasha has been a full-time acrylic painter since 2004 and has sold over 1,000 original works to private and corporate collections worldwide. Her art has been featured on ABC's Extreme Makeover Home Edition and the hit sitcom The Middle, as well as Hollywood films like Marley Me, which, by the way, made me cry like a baby. And she is also the founder of Art Career Academy, an online mentorship program for artists. Natasha, tell me what I missed in that intro and maybe give us a peek into your personal life.
I don't think you missed anything, actually.
All right.
To think of. I've always been really creative from a very young age, very motivated to be entrepreneurial, but also to create art. So it's just something that has always been in me. And it wasn't until I was about maybe 17, 18 years old, I really started pursuing business and just trying to find things that I could create to monetize. I did a lot of writing. I hadn't started a blog until 2005, but I was writing ebooks and I was selling handcrafted things on eBay back in the day. I think I started eBay back in 1998, and I started selling my artwork on there in 2004. And I was only 22 years old at the time. I had just had my second child. He was about 2 months old when I started. And it really was an experiment when I started selling my work because I was going to school full time. My passion was to become an animator. My goal was to become an animator for Disney one day. And so I was working on a graphic design degree, and I was pursuing that route. And when I started selling my art, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, whether it was going to be successful, even how to go about it. But because I was already, creating art my whole life, I was just hoping that, there was possibly a possibility that I could sell my work.
How did it go on eBay?
Funny thing is, my first attempt was an absolute failure. So when I first started, I went about it the totally wrong way. I didn't know anything about the art industry. I had this assumption, this idea that you had to be this established artist in your mid 40s to 50s, someone who had an agent or a representative or a gallery selling their work. So when I first started, I thought I had to come up with a better name. I didn't like my real name, which is Natasha Wescoat.
That's a good name.
I know, isn't that funny? It's funny. Everyone asks me all the time, is that really your real name? It sounds so fake. But I changed my last name and I changed the spelling of my first name, and I thought I had to sound like really exotic. And I embellished my biography a little bit because I didn't have anything, no experience other than doing art competitions in high school and selling my work to family and friends. So when I first started, I listed a piece that I had created when I was in high school, and I listed it for this really extravagant number. It was so ridiculous, and absolutely no bites, no views, nothing. And so I thought, yep, I was wrong. This is ridiculous. I can't sell art. I can't do this myself. And it took a lot of soul searching and exploring more about that world and that industry, because I didn't know anything, coming from a small town, no connections, no art community, nothing like that when I started out. And it was when I really just, put out my real story. I'm a young mother. I'm from this area. I'm just starting out, telling them my authentic story. And I used my real name. And I listed one painting on eBay. And the first one had sold for, I think it was $70. But that was like such a huge win for me. It was really exciting and really inspired me to pursue it. So I just started consuming anything and everything that I could, any books on business and marketing, anything on art. And there wasn't a whole lot in the beginning in those days because, video blogging didn't become a thing till maybe a year or two later. YouTube didn't exist yet. and there weren't a lot of artists that were doing what I wanted to do. So I really had to do a lot of experimentation and trial and error to get there. But that was like the huge push to pursue that. And that's when I decided to take a break from school. I wanted to be home with my children as it was, and I really needed to be there for them. So that was a great motivation.
That's a great story, and I really like your perseverance and, kind of pivoting and being able to do it that way. What's the big takeaway that you would give to our listeners about that?
Really just the one thing I would say is you really got to be brave and take those risks. I didn't know anything about anything when I started out, and I consumed all the content that I could to teach myself to get there. And really it's they say fake it till you make it a lot, and that pretty much was like how I went about my business. I didn't know how to build a website. I didn't know how to blog. My first few years were kind of like embarrassing because I hadn't practiced writing and how to present myself and share my story. So really just taking those risks, not worrying about being perfect when you start out, and put yourself out there. Be willing and open to learn and change and evolve, and get input from others that are watching you. It really will help improve your efforts and your offerings and make you a better person and make your business really better.
Yeah, that's great advice. And fake it till you make it, I think, is, fake it, I think, is something that everybody does. Like, fake it till you make it is something that literally every single person who's ever made it has done. Like, you have to start somewhere. So whether you want to call it faking it or whatever, I think that's perfect advice. You just got to go for it.
Yeah, definitely. Just don't change your name like I did.
Don't change it. I changed my name too, but that's just for anonymity.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. And I talk about that a lot too. Brush names, as you call it.
Right.
Right.
Like a pen name.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think anything about that is wrong either. I think that's great. That's really a personal preference for, anyone who wants to do an online business.
Yeah, you can kind of distinct yourself in that way. What are some things that, specifically with the art aspect of it, like the creation as opposed to the business aspect, what are some things that like kind of hold you back from doing the work?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think you can get bogged down a lot by the whole process of running a business and marketing. So sometimes, that your lifestyle, whether you got kids, I have 4 kids now, and taking care of just the everyday tasks of, my responsibilities in my personal life, it really can be a huge drain on my creativity, on my ambition. And so really it's a matter of focusing on getting that time to yourself that you need to build that creativity, to keep yourself filled up, because when you're working on something very creative, you are pouring yourself into it, and you can get to a point where you burn out and you can get overwhelmed by all this other stuff that isn't involved in that process. So it's important to make the time and make it a regular routine, even if you don't feel like you can be creative, whether you're a writer, a photographer, artist, whatever it is. Because when you start putting that in place, that routine and that regular process, your mind starts to prepare itself, and it becomes natural to get in the mode and in the flow to create.
Yeah, that's a biggie, isn't it? Is just kind of to put in the time and treat it like a relationship. Like you have to put in the time with your wife or your husband. You have to put in the time with your kids or your friends. You got to put in the time with work, and you also have to put in the time with your artwork, like with your creative endeavor, and pencil it in and stick to it. Can you take us back to and tell us maybe the story about your worst moment creatively?
Oh gosh, my worst moment creatively. Oh man, I probably had a bunch of those.
We all have.
If I could pinpoint one, I think it was when, and I think a lot of artists go through this, and a lot of creative entrepreneurs, when you start trying to monetize on your creative pursuits. Really, it was for me when I started to wonder if the work that I was doing was not going to sell, or it was not marketable. And so I spent too much time trying to be something that I was not. And I started creating work that wasn't truly part of my craft or my medium, where my skills and my talents really were. And I would create such terrible work. I would spend so much time wasting on trying to make stuff that sold. And of course, naturally, it would not sell. I had a hard time pushing this stuff or trying to get anything out of it. And it always was a wake up call. And I made the mistake probably a couple of times in the beginning of my career where I was all over the map with my work. And it wasn't until I came to the realization that I needed to be true to myself and what I was passionate about in terms of my art that the work became good again. It really was like when the business got in the way was when I had my worst point creatively, and I was focusing on all the wrong things. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so would you say that you kind of separate yourself from the business when you're actually doing the art? Do you even think about that anymore?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the things I had to really do with myself personally, because I have I have a problem with thinking too much about the business aspects. I
Mm-hmm.
had to separate myself from that. I would make sure that in terms of my daily routines, I was not working on any marketing or business or advertising kind of stuff, like the whole business side of anything, the same day that I was creating my art. So I would make days for just my art. I put on the music that inspired me, anything that was not business related, and just focus on what I wanted to make. And that really improved my work so, so much. And also, I think that really having a better understanding of my own vision and what I wanted to offer to the world outside of making a living from it, that was when things really, really changed the game for me. I had a really big eye-opening discussion with a friend of mine's, his grandfather. Sometime when I had lived in California, and I was really going through a period of conflict and frustration. The economy took a dive in 2008, and I was really having a huge shift happen in my art career because the market had a huge dip. The interior design market, the real estate market, that affects the art market. And I was really going through a lot of soul reflection, and things were really a huge struggle for me. And when I had this discussion with this guy, he reminded me that I wasn't focusing on what my art offered and what it offered to me personally, spiritually, whatever. And that's when I had to realize that I was focusing on all the wrong things. When I really took the chance to just try to focus on it on a personal level and on terms with what my vision was or my goals were for the future, that really, really helped me shift towards the art more authentically, I guess you could say. And that helped me immensely in my creativity.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Art has a way of kind of kicking you in the butt, when
Yes.
when it's no, 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 you're doing this for the wrong reasons. You're doing it you should be doing it for yourself and for others. And I think that's really interesting that happened to you, and that's a great lesson to learn.
Oh, yes, yes.
On the flip side, can you take us to maybe one of your best or most triumphant creative moments?
Oh, yeah. So actually, this had happened to me sometime in 2010. This was a year before I moved back home to Michigan. I was, still going through that mode of trying to find myself again and find what my art was supposed to be. And I had a great conversation with another artist who was a musician over dinner, talking about, their own pursuits. And I don't know what it was exactly that gave me that epiphany, but that night after that conversation, I went home to my studio and I started creating something completely different than anything I had been making over the last few years. I didn't focus on its marketability. I didn't focus on whether anyone was going to want to buy it. What I did was just paint totally for myself, and I created the most amazing painting I'd ever done in a long time, and that really helped shift where I was going with my work. And ever since I pursued that totally and truly, that's when the opportunities actually started opening up for me. I was getting more art shows and galleries that I'd been trying to get in for the last 5 to 8 years. and all kinds of other things like that. So it was very, very interesting that when I actually pursued my art and what it really should have looked like, what I wanted to do with it, that's when all the actual the business side started to succeed again.
That's interesting. And when you made that shift, what did you think about all the stuff that you had done before that?
I mean, I loved the art that I was doing before, but it really wasn't something I was very passionate about. I had started creating the Jewel Tree series, which everyone seems to know about.
Mm-hmm.
I had been doing it literally for 5 years. The same flipping tree in different ways, and that's great and
Yeah.
everything. Consistency and branding right there. You can tell that, if you see one of my pieces is easily recognizable, and that's great. But I was ready to make a change and move forward to something new, and I felt like I was really stagnant and in one place.
So that must have felt like such a relief, because I think your creative self was probably just urging you to come on, Natasha, move on, move on. So that must have been such a relief when you actually were able to.
Oh yeah, it was so liberating. I was so pumped. I remember the next day, I came downstairs and my friends were over at the house, and I showed them all my new pieces, and they were like, I remember their jaws dropped to the floor, and so they they pretty much confirmed that I was going in the right direction. So I was pretty excited.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works.
That's great. And so you did a bunch of pieces that one night?
Yeah, I actually, nonstop, I started painting, and moving in that direction, and I was live streaming the painting, just showing everyone, for no other reason than
Oh,
to do
cool.
it. Yeah. I've been live streaming for a lot of years, but I was just so excited with this stuff, and people were really responding to it. And so, indirectly, a lot of the opportunities that were coming out were because I was live streaming it. But yeah, just because I was true to myself in the work, people really responded to it too, and they saw, I mean, the quality and everything was better. So
I didn't know that you live streamed. Where can we find that?
originally it was on Justin.tv, but that place is gone now.
Yeah, that's old school.
Oh yeah. I started there
You're an
back
OG.
oh man, I'm totally OG. I was doing that, and I was doing Ustream as well, but now typically I use Facebook Live. I
Oh, cool.
have my Facebook page, and I will live paint on there, and I've done a little bit of Periscope, but mainly Facebook right now.
Cool, and that's facebook.com/Natasha Wescoat.
Yeah.
All right, before we get into our final push, I'd like to ask you about our Career Academy a little bit. Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. So, 2011, I launched the site, careeracademy.com, because I had a lot of interest from artists and creative entrepreneurs on how I did what I did. I launched something from nothing and had been able to, travel the country and collaborate with different brands. And so they wanted to learn what I was doing. I'd been talking at conferences and doing panels and workshops here and there, but I never really pursued the teaching aspect. So that's when I decided I was going to make the move. And so what the site is now is I offer a yearly mentorship where I work with creatives on a monthly basis and offer different content there as well. There's a lot of free trainings and things like that where I teach artists how to use social media and the web to build their brand out and find ways to pursue their art career full time.
Yeah, and I've actually checked that out as well, and I would urge everyone listening to go on ourcareeracademy.com to check it out, and also Natasha's blog on her website. There's tons of free stuff that you just kind of give away, and like really good resources. Like I was reading your warm-up routine the other day.
Oh
yeah, it was a great post, and tons of other stuff, so definitely check that out. What would you say is your formula for balancing your time with everything that you have on your plate?
Really just having a schedule and setting aside each day for one specific task. That really helped me balance it out. So, one day a week, I will focus on the marketing and promotion of my work. Another day, I'll just work on following up with galleries or potential clients. Another day, I'll work on just design for my licensing. I work with an agent where I do other work outside of my fine art. And then I set aside for a day where it's like all day I paint. I don't do anything else. I don't answer emails. I don't even look at them. I don't look at my social media. I just paint. And that has been a huge game changer for me. I don't burn out anymore. I used to burn out like every month. I go through a cycle where I was just so over it, and so like literally the marketing, I would do it too much, and I'd be so overwhelmed by all the stuff that I would be like crying. I'd be depressed. I hated it. It was a huge drain. So when I changed the way that I did stuff and how I approached it, that really, really helped.
Just unplug yourself and do the work. That's all you gotta do.
Yes, exactly.
What does art and creativity bring to your life?
It really fulfills me. I like to create things that I imagine in my mind, so that's a huge benefit to me. I've always been that way. It's like a form of entertainment, and of course, expression. Expressing something and sharing my ideas and my vision to other people through my work. It makes my life interesting. I love getting up the first thing in the morning, and I take a blank canvas and I start working on something, anything I want that I'm imagining. Really, it just keeps you young. It's very childlike, I guess, and it's great because I get to share it with my family. I get to share it with other people and see how it affects them, and that's a game changer there as well. I didn't realize until I got that feedback from other people how it was affecting them that made it even more special to me.
Yeah, it's a huge part of art is sharing and communication, and so it's definitely nice when you can actually receive the other end of it, where you can get a response.
Oh yeah, and it's so much. It's really needed. It's absolutely needed. I think any kind of artist will benefit from doing things in person. Gallery shows or art fairs, or just sharing with your friends, having that response and seeing it through someone else's eyes changes everything. It makes it so worth it when you're tired, drained, and you've been working. It really does.
Yeah, it's not just to pat your own ego. You just kind of need that push yourself, It's
kind of like a confirmation that your art is affecting the world in some positive way, and it I don't know what it is. I think we all have it as humans, the need for something greater and to offer something to the world. And when you see it's benefiting people more than just being a nice decoration or photograph, that is huge.
It's the nicest thing to tap into. It's addicting too.
Oh yeah, it is. It really is.
Natasha, do you have a favorite book or YouTube clip or anything else that you perhaps draw inspiration from and that maybe we could too?
I really loved, I know it might be a cliche, but I absolutely love listening to Tony Robbins, and one of his books that I'll listen to on a regular basis on audio is The Awaken the Giant Within. And that was a huge help for mindset, especially for creatives. We get down on ourselves, we're self-deprecating, and we forget that what we offer is of some value. And just listening to his book and reading it on a regular basis has really helped me myself improve the way that I look at things and remind me of the value that I offer. And some people I really like to listen to, a really great YouTube account is Gary Vaynerchuk, of course. I love his frankness and his go-to-itness. He's a lot like me, very OCD, just does stuff without fear. And that's a huge thing, too, for creatives that I talk about. And I think it would really benefit them to follow someone like him. It just no holds barred bravery right there. So
yeah, he's great. And I also got Awaken the Giant Within for Christmas.
Oh,
so
awesome.
I'll have to read it.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome.
All right, Natasha, now it's time for our final push. And this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the person on the shoulder who you've already inspired today and give them that final push into taking action.
Oh, that's a good one. I would say, whoever you are, whatever it is that you do, I want you to take the time and reflect on this one thing. What is it that you offer the world? What is your gift that you can offer? And I want you to think about how you can give it and be brave. Don't fear rejection. You will get, especially in this new world where everything is online and we are exposing ourselves in so many different ways, I want you to be brave and bold and take action and share your work without fear.
Share your work without fear. That's great advice. You can find Natasha on our website, which is natasha-wescoat.com. You can find her on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, all Natasha Wescoat. And on Twitter, she is at Natasha, which I don't know how you got that, but and you can also go to ourcareeracademy.com. Natasha, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and giving us that push.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Big thank you to Natasha for coming on the show. Remember, guys and girls, this idea that your brain works in different ways, and it's very hard to kind of switch back and forth from this business mode to this creativity mode. And whether or not you're actually in this for selling your art, you're hopefully at least in it to perhaps share your work and to promote your art and yourself on the internet. And that requires a lot of, not hustling necessarily, but just kind of putting yourself out there and sharing, as Natasha suggested. But when you're kind of doing that, you're out hustling and bustling and promoting and finding other like-minded individuals online, it's kind of hard to switch back to that creative mode if it's time to start getting back to work. So I love the idea of just picking a day and saying, all right, this is devoted towards the business or towards the promotion or whatever else is involved outside of the actual creation of the work, and then picking a different day for, the actual creation, because it does kind of require you to kind of get in the zone and be, fully focused on being as true to your art as you possibly can be. And it's really interesting that one of Natasha's biggest switches was when she was able to turn that business voice in her head off and just be one with her art. And I found it very telling that, when she was able to do that, she created completely new work because, it was from her heart, and she was able to kind of get it out there unfiltered. Like she said, I love that story of, just coming downstairs and being like, guys, look what I just did. So keep that in mind as you go and do your work, hopefully as soon as this episode is over. Try to forget about all that other stuff that is for future you to worry about and not current you to worry about. All that current you has to worry about is just being with your art, just you and your art and nothing else, and just putting the time in and getting it done. That's what it's all about. I want to take a minute to give some iTunes ratings and reviews shout outs, because it's been a few days and they are backing up, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. Thank you so much. Skio CEO said, nice show, interesting content, great host, great sound quality, a pleasure to listen to. Brian Hannon said, I'm done procrastinating. Thanks, guys. Yes, Brian, that is the idea. Counterculture Society said, if you're a creative, you'll love this. Amanda Barely said, love this podcast so far. Daniel Bauer said, this is a great podcast to get you off your butt and do what you love, to create. You will leave inspired and energized, ready to leave your mark with your art. Brittany Felix said, wow, I've listened to business and travel podcasts, but I've never really listened to a podcast just for being creative, and it's pretty awesome. There are so many different creative outlets, but all creatives generally have a common thread of wanting to experience life and all it has to offer. This is such an amazing show. Plus, Youngman Brown's voice is so pleasant to listen to. Thank you. That's very nice. And It's Me RD said, this is a really helpful podcast. I intended to listen to 1 and ended up listening to 3. Keep up the great work. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you listened to 3 instead of 1. But again, if you're still listening to this episode and haven't started your work, the idea of the show is to not like binge listen, which, I appreciate and I'm flattered, but it's kind of meant to just give you that one push a day and you take it from there and get on to your work. It's great. A lot of people have reached out and said that, they listen while they work, which is definitely awesome as well. But please don't let this podcast get in the way of doing the actual work. Because as I've said before, a lot of times I know how that gets. It feels like you're doing work if you're listening to inspirational content or reading inspirational books, but that's really not my intention for this. My intention is for you to, turn it off after it's over and just go and get your stuff done, just to go and put content out there. So please, that's the nicest thing you can do, aside from giving me a 5-star review on iTunes, is to just get some work done. And of course, I would love to see it. If you want to shoot it my way, you can hit me up on Instagram at yourcreativepush, or you can shoot me an email, youngman@yourcreativepush.com. I would love to see your work, especially if it was motivated by this podcast. I can't tell you what that would do for me. But that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for subscribing. And I can't wait to give you a push again tomorrow. So go and get your work done and have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.